Hey guys, received an email from some observant person who'd been watching some of our videos and had picked up a little bit about my professional past that I might have mentioned at different times, and crime prevention and law enforcement background. And that person was asking if I would talk about personal safety. So it's sort of something I've been out of for a while and not really given any thought to for a long time, but I might have some stuff that might be useful to somebody. We'll just have a bit of a talk about it, and then if it's popular or some people find it useful, then we can do some more, because we can break it down to lots of different topics. You know, personal safety, public transport, personal safety at home, you know, all different ones. So we'll just do personal safety when walking places, and we'll run that up the flagpole and see if anybody likes it, and if it's if anyone gets anything useful out of it, then we might do another one. So yeah, personal safety when walking places. So just to start off with, this road's not a good example because it's a single lane road, but as a general rule, it's best if you can, if you've got a normal street, two-way street with cars going both directions, it's best if you can walk on the side of the street that is facing the oncoming traffic. So in other words, here we are in Japan, we've got cars driving the left-hand side of the road, and there's a car coming towards us on the right-hand side of the road. If we're walking down this street, it's better to walk on the right-hand side footpath over there, on that sidewalk over there. So the traffic is approaching you. So if we go walking this direction, we want to be on the other side of the street. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is just a straight out personal safety thing. If you're walking on the side of the street with the cars approaching you, if one of those drivers isn't paying attention and swerves off and is going to hit you, you'll see him coming if you're walking facing the traffic. Or, you know, drunk driver, or just somebody not paying attention, and they swerve over a bit and they're going to hit you. If you're walking facing them, you'll see it, and that'll give you some chance to get out of the way, an increased chance of getting out of the way. That's the first reason. So straight out for a safety point of view. From a security point of view, it means that somebody who wants to grab you off the street or rob you, grab something out of your hand, will have a harder time doing it if you're seeing the cars approaching you. So for example, where we're driving now, if somebody was walking along the same direction as we are going on the left-hand side of the road here, we could come up behind them slowly, jump out of the car, grab their bag or grab them, and they wouldn't see us until they felt us, because we're coming at them from behind. So that's why it would be better if they were walking in this direction to walk on the right-hand side of the road. You with me there so far? So that's the first little tip. The next one will be things like Walkmans and iPods and things. You know, listening to music when you're walking. Although it's perfectly understandable and cool and groovy and pleasant thing to do, our situational awareness is really decreased if we're listening to music, which is one of the reasons we do it. Because when you're walking along listening to music, it puts you in a bit of a different place, and it's all cool and groovy, and you know, we find it very relaxing because it puts us in a different place. The problem with that is it makes it so much easier for someone to walk up behind you. You know, walk up behind you and grab your bag, or stick a knife in your back, or grab you off the street. With this thing that guys, usually our risk is robbery. Occasionally there's a pointless attack where it's just violence, but usually there's a motivation. It's usually robbery. Females are in an unfortunate situation that they are also sometimes the target. So with guys, it's usually they want what we've got. With girls, it could be that they want what you've got as far as possessions are concerned, but you're also at risk of sexual abuse or rape or whatever. So yeah, sneaking up behind you when you're listening to music is a lot easier than if you're not listening to music. And it also leads on to the next thing, which is where you're going and the route you're taking. So example, this route that I've just taken in the car is a fairly sort of a backward sort of route, very quiet as you can see, not a lot of people around. On foot at the wrong time of day, this route would not be a good route to take if you're on foot, of course. Depending on what country you're in, of course, too. This is going to vary from country to country and area to area, what areas are safe and what aren't. But of course, it's always safer to stick to roads that are carrying more traffic and more pedestrians and have more shops on them, and, you know, more busier areas are obviously always going to be safer. And you need to obviously keep a situational awareness of whether you're in a safe area or not. And you know, where I am here, if I was to call out, would anybody hear me? Or if I was to be attacked, would anybody notice? And if I was to be attacked, is there somewhere safe I could go? So you need to, you know, try and walk in areas where there's shops and convenience stores or businesses, or, you know, places that you could go, restaurants or whatever. Sort of built up areas if possible, rather than be walking down quiet back areas where there's nobody around. And the problem with listening to music is that you could be walking in quite a safe area, and then you could end up in an area that's not so safe and not be so aware of it because you're listening to your music. That's the problem with that. So that's another problem with listening to music. So from a safety and security point of view, listening to music is not a good idea. And then just from a safety point of view as well, you know, some car comes roaring up behind you and you don't hear it coming, or some idiot on a motorbike that, you know, has lost control or something, and you don't hear it coming because you're listening to music. So strictly speaking, from a security and safety point of view, listening to music is not necessarily a good idea. Then expanding off that, talking about being places where you can get help, so, you know, places where there's businesses and places you can go if somebody does sort of make you feel threatened, or if you find yourself feeling a bit threatened or a bit nervous, or some car looks like it's following you, or some dude looks like he's following you, or for some reason you feel uncomfortable, you want to obviously go to somewhere that's got lots of people as soon as possible. So walk into the nearest business, you know, the nearest restaurant or the nearest cafe or the nearest convenience store or whatever, to get where there's lots of people as quickly as possible is a good strategy for safety. And again, it depends on where you are. I mean, you know, in some countries, if you've got some really crazy places where, you know, they could follow you into those places with a gun and still abduct you anyway or something, it's quite possible. None of this advice is absolutely watertight in all circumstances. It's just generally speaking, these are good strategies, generally speaking. No guarantees, guys. So yeah, you know, you feel a bit threatened, a bit uncomfortable, walk into the nearest open business or the nearest place where there's lots of people, and get amongst as many people as you can. I gave this advice once to a girl, or to a group of people, and in that group was a girl, and she told me, a few months later, she told me that she was in a very quiet shop looking at magazines, and a guy came up beside her and dropped out his private parts, and she just walked away. She walked away from him and walked out. It was a shopping centre, and walked away, walked out of the shop, and he followed her. So she looked around and she saw a butcher shop, and she walked into the butcher shop, which is just perfect, because what have you got in butcher shops? You've got some usually fairly sort of hefty, strong fellas, you know, guys that cut up meat carcasses for a living are pretty strong. And what have they got on them? They've got these big things on their sides full of knives. And she's walked in there and said to these guys, that guy out there, you know, flashed himself at me and he's following me. And these butchers walked out the door towards the guy and he ran away. So it's just like the perfect outcome. So there's that. So yeah, walk into the nearest place where you've got lots of people, of course, is a good strategy. Which leads to the next thing, and that's that we should never leave the house without enough money on us to catch a taxi home. So if you know in your city the most it's going to cost you, if you're at the furthest point from your house, the most it's going to cost you to get a taxi home is $20 or $30 or $40 or whatever it is, you should always have that amount of money on you. So even if you never normally catch taxis, you should have that amount of money on you, because that backup is excellent. Even driving the car. Now, I'd give the same advice if we talk about safety when driving a car. Whatever reason, if you leave the house, if you leave your house at any time, you should have enough money on you to be able to catch a taxi back to your house at all times. So that means that then what you can do is, because not everybody, depending on what country you are, again, not everybody wants to get involved with your dramas if you feel like you're being followed or whatever, and responses to these sorts of things can be slow and ineffective. So sometimes a good strategy is, if you feel like you're being followed or someone's making you uncomfortable or you're not happy with some circumstance, and we should always listen to those instincts. There's instincts inside us that warn us about things, and quite often it's not even something we're consciously thinking about, we just feel uncomfortable. That person's making me feel uncomfortable, I don't know why, but I feel threatened by that person. Listen to that instinct, because there's some basic primal instincts in us that warn us of danger, and we should always listen when we're feeling those sorts of things. So if for some reason you're feeling really uncomfortable, not happy with the circumstances at all, walk into a convenience store or walk into a shop or walk into a restaurant and call a taxi. Now, you should have a fully charged cell phone on you anyway, which is another good bit of advice. Always make sure you've got a cell phone on you, and always make sure it's fully charged. Never leave the house with it without your cell phone fully charged, because if it's not fully charged, it can end up being a waste of time to you anyway and being of no benefit at all. So you should have a fully charged cell phone on you. Some places you can buy a little thing that's basically a battery in a little holder that you can plug into your cell phone if it does go flat, to give it charge, to give it so you can use it. And you should always have a working cell phone on you. Or if you don't, which you should have, but if you don't, then at least you can use a public phone or use a phone in one of these businesses and call yourself a taxi. Because usually taxis will, you can get a faster response from a taxi than you can from police or anybody else anyway. So if you call a taxi and a taxi comes to the front door of that place, and you walk out the door and into the taxi and you get it to take you home. And quite often that's a good solution. If it's a really high risk situation, then you need to call the police as well. Obviously, you know, if it's a really dangerous situation, you can call the police and call the police. So, but this is just more about, this is more of a low threat situation where you're feeling uncomfortable. You think maybe someone's following you, some sus dude's following you in his overcoat or something, and 9 times out of 10, if that's somebody's doing something like that, and you walk into a business like that and put your cell phone to your ear, most of those sort of deviants will run away anyway, because they don't want to get caught. And that's basically, with most of these strategies, that's what we're working on. There's no real foolproof strategies, but what we need to do is make ourselves the least soft target around, because these guys are looking for the softest target, and we need to make sure that's not us. So you need to make sure that's not you. You don't want to be the softest target around, and picking up the cell phone and getting on the cell phone will quite often be enough to make most deviants run away, because they're going to be worried that you're calling the cops, you know. And that's effective. That's effective even if you're not, you know, if there isn't somewhere you can go in. If you're just walking down the street and you think some guy's following you, or you think someone's up to no good, putting the cell phone to your ear and calling someone's not a bad strategy anyway. You know, and if there's a family member or a friend that you can call and tell them where you are straight away, first thing you say, hey, I'm on, you know, Walnut Street, I'm on Walnut Street at wherever you are. First thing you say, and there's some loser following me, I think, can you come and get me? You know, is a good strategy. If he can hear you, add a description. You know, there's a guy here who's about 25 years old in a blue shirt and jeans. I think he's following me, you know. But what we've got to do is, it's a balance with these sorts of things though, is you don't want to make a conflict. So you don't want to purposefully say things about somebody like that that might not be true, because he might not mean you any harm. But you don't want to antagonize. You never want to antagonize somebody to a point where you escalate the problem. And that's quite often, unfortunately, advice or strategies that we hear about in books or on the internet or on TV or whatever. unfortunately, quite often those strategies involve escalating the problem, and that's what we don't want to do. And weapons is another example of that, where you get a circumstance that, you know, might be a level of risk there, and then you might escalate the problem by involving a weapon, and that happens. And we might do a video about that one day too, talking about weapons, because that's one problem with weapons, is that you can escalate the problem. You get some guy who's not armed and not really intending to do you any harm, or, you know, has some intention, but you bring a weapon into the equation, it can escalate the problem and make it worse, and we don't want to do that. So this is really quite a complex topic that we could go on and on about this. So what we've got so far there is just a few little ideas that a lot of it's obvious, and if you're finding that you're thinking, when you're hearing this stuff, that you're thinking it's obvious, that's good. That means that you already have a level of awareness about these sorts of things, and that you've already given it some thought, and that's a good thing. So if you're finding some of this stuff obvious, then that's good. If you're disagreeing with any of this stuff, that's fine too. That's your prerogative, of course, to disagree or think something different. My comments are just based on 20 years of experience and yearly training courses on the topic. So if people have other experience or different ideas, then that's fine too. So anyway, we might wrap that. That's probably enough for this video, and yeah, we'll see if anyone's found that useful or is interested in more. We might do another one. We might make this into a playlist if there's enough interest in it. So click that thumbs up button if you think this was useful, or leave a comment. Lots of people don't like leaving comments. If you don't want to leave a comment, just click the like button down there, and that'll give you an idea. Other people, if they want to click the dislike button, they can too. Don't usually look at that. It's not relevant. Even YouTube doesn't worry about the dislike button. That doesn't enter into their formula thing. It's only the like button that counts. So yeah, do that. If you think this was worthwhile, you want me to do more, just click that like button down there, and that'll give me a vote then, and I can see how many people vote for another one. Because this can go on. We could do 100 videos like this. This topic's huge. Absolutely huge. So probably the next one would be about weapons or public transport, possibly. So, and that's another thing. If you've got any specific questions, leave them in the comment section. Just ask if there's any particular topics you'd like to have covered as far as personal security and safety is concerned. Anyway, hope somebody found that useful. More videos coming soon.